about going in and making areas more safe. One of the things that we want to do is that we want to get all of the unnatural or highly flammable fuels out of the area. And then it's our highest goal to remove as much of that flammable or combustible material as we can. And so there's a whole range of treatments that we can use to do that. Some of the best would include things that would have us going in and eliminating the unwanted fuels and then getting them off of the site. And so we could do that by, that's the reason why on big projects, like some of the projects that the Forest Service and BLM are conducting currently, why they do so much of that open burning. But these project areas aren't a candidate for a lot of open burning because of the proximity to all of your houses. And so we start backing off from that and trying to come up with a solution that allows us to mitigate the fuels, allows us to get most of that biomass out of there so that the fuels don't remain on site. And so some of the next best options for us are cutting and stacking in piles that can then be burned on site later, if we can do that safe. That's also not something that we're talking about for these projects. Or burning the materials in a device like this. This air curtain burner is designed a lot the same way as the airflow wood stoves that you see, where there's an air curtain that's formed by a big fan unit that's on the burn trailer. And so we start a fire in there and then turn the fan on, and it causes the fuel to be consumed very completely, and it also causes the heat to be driven back down into the rest of the fuels, so the fuels burn very cleanly, so there's not a lot of smoke that we have to worry about in the area as well. Going on down the list with regard to effectiveness, some of the other methodologies that we can use is cutting the fuels and then hauling them off, which we recognize from a budgetary standpoint will be extremely expensive based on the volume of fuel that we've got, especially on the Sky Ridge project with all that oak in there. Or cutting the fuels, reducing the size of the fuels by just cutting them and leaving that material in place, or chipping in place, which in both of those cases we're obviously leaving a great deal of the biomass behind, which remains and could still be receptive to embers, cause more active fire spread, or actually be the source of where a fire starts in the area. So we're hoping that as we pull this project together, one of the things that we'd like you to weigh in on, and one of the things that we want you to know that we're most heavily considering, is trying to burn the fuels on site in a device like this, an air curtain burner, where we can completely get rid of the biomass of the fuels, not have huge smoke mitigation problems that would impact you, and we can do it safely enough so that we aren't risking losing control of pile burns or an open burn project and having that fire get away from us.
Charlie.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you guys all for being here. It's a really important topic for all of us to be focusing on. I'm glad that we have so many people who are here to learn more about it. But my focus is really to look at defensible space around homes and work with private property owners to help ensure that they're doing what they can on their private property to help increase the effectiveness of any treatment that happens out a little bit further from the home. And so when you're thinking about mitigating fire risk to a structure, you really have to think in a couple of different ways. And the first one is you have to look at any place that an ember could ignite that structure directly. So actually about 75–80% of homes that burn from wildfire actually burn from embers becoming lodged on the home or making their way inside the home, or starting a small spot fire directly around the home. So the flame front of a fire doesn't ever actually have to get to a home in order for that home to be lost from a wildfire. And if you look at pictures online of neighborhoods that have burned, oftentimes you'll see full trees standing in the middle of the neighborhood with all the structures gone. And that shows that it really was most likely those ember ignitions that resulted in the loss of those structures. So there's a number of different ways that you can harden your home against those. In the back corner, I have a table set up with all sorts of information about ember ignitions, if that's something that you're interested in. But beyond that, you also have to look at the fuel directly around your home and then a little bit further out as well. And so we break that up into a couple of different zones. And the first is zone 1, which is the first 30 feet around a home. And within zone 1 is really the only place that you can have potential of a structure to ignite directly from radiant heat, as long as it's on a flat surface. And so really zone 1 does get adjusted out a little bit further on steep slopes, but 30 feet is really the priority around your home. And we basically want to make sure that we're not having such a significant amount of fuel that is going to ignite your structure directly. And that's variable on a lot of things, but in particular what materials that the structure is made out of and where placement of windows, things like that. From there we look out at zone 2, and zone 2 is from 30 to 100 feet out. And basically the priority of zone 2 is to bring fire to the ground, decrease flame lengths, decrease intensity, and allow firefighters to then safely be in that area to fight that fire. Firefighters have a really easy time putting out ember ignitions, but we need to make sure that that fire is behaving in a way where they can safely be there so that they can be there to put out those ember ignitions. It's also really important to connect treatments and to have treatments moving out from the home and into these zone 2 or to these larger areas. And basically the reason that we want to see those connected treatments is because, one, we don't want a fire to get past that, have an ember ignition, and then immediately increase in intensity. So that's why it's so important for you guys as homeowners to focus on what's happening around your home, because we don't want that fire to increase in intensity if it does get past that fuel break. And then also we just want to essentially treat this area as a whole group. One of the things with homes so close together is oftentimes out in your areas there's going to be somebody else's home or somebody's shed or something else within your zone 1. The reality is that we need to make sure that as a group we're really doing what we need to in order to treat this property so that we don't see those structure-to-structure ignitions that we oftentimes see within the wildland urban interface.